This is the In Good Time podcast with Nick Lowe and Andrew Steininger. In this episode, we tackle a large group of topics from student teaching to your first job. In part 3, we discuss graduating college and getting your first job. We cover what it's like to graduate from college, the job search, interview tips, and perspectives on interviewing. Joining us is Tony Valenti, educator and alumnus of Elmhurst College.
Welcome back to the In Good Time podcast. I hope you're having a wonderful day. This is our third episode of our little mini series here, from getting you from student teaching all the way to your first job. We're going to be talking about graduation, job search, and getting hired. And again, we're joined by Mr. Anthony Valenti here, who is a teacher based out of the suburbs of Chicago. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Tony Valenti. I am a band director at Cooper Middle School out in Buffalo Grove that is based out of Wheeling District 21. My responsibilities there are teaching the 5th grade beginning band, the intermediate 7-8 group, and the lower jazz band there. It's been an exciting 3 years, that's for sure.
Especially with recent COVID events, but that's for another time.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so all three of us have actually, in 3 consecutive years, gone through the job process. And all three of us, I believe, in 3 consecutive years went through different graduation processes too. So let's just jump right in. Let's talk about what it's like to graduate from college, and then we're going to get into what it's like trying to become a newbie music educator.
Well, I guess since I was the first one to go, I guess
yeah. We'll start with the most normal graduation.
Yeah. So graduation day, it was honestly very surreal. Like, whoa, because for me, that was 5 years of college. Like, it paid off in an instant. It's like, all right, I'm done. This is weird. I did the thing. I got the degree. I got the piece of paper that says I am remotely qualified to teach students, and I can go out and get my first job. And it was just honestly one of the best feelings I've ever had. Because you work at something for so long, and you're like, it's real. This is a thing that I have now. Like, whoa, who'd have thought? And then I was very happy I didn't have to go back to college, even though I went back for round 2. But I digress.
It's definitely nice to you have a little bit of time where you feel like, for where I'm at, I have finally gotten to the point where I am good at what I do. Like, I can get better, but I'm finally like, yes. There's a piece of paper that says I'm good at what I can do. Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's like relieved to be done. You know, you're kind of disappointed that your college experience has come to an end, but you're looking forward to the next getting your job started. Also, the actual graduation ceremony is very boring. So,
also, Nick, at yours, was there a tent at yours?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we didn't get that.
Tent.
I got to bake in the sun in a black gown. It was awful.
Graduation's pretty fun when you're in the band behind the ceremony itself, and you see the band people up there, and you just go, yeah.
Yeah, that's the only fun part. Then you just sit there and whatnot. But I'm curious to hear, how was graduation 2020 style?
You mean, how wasn't graduation 2020 style? So it's first things first. You two are absolutely right. It's bittersweet. I think all of us desperately wanted to graduate when we did. We were ready to move on to that next point in our life. And it's not like we didn't enjoy college in any way. You know, we thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's basically, it's like a caterpillar, right? You start to outgrow your situation. There was not much left in college, with the current situation in our lives that we were at, not much left for us to do while we were there. But yeah, graduation 2020, it was wild. I mean, COVID hit in early March. So it was a while until graduation, but all that time people were asking the question, you know, are we going to have it? Are we going to, what's going on? Maybe we could do it outside, all this stuff. Funny story. My cap and gown, I didn't order it till late, which was a mistake. You know, you do that early if you can. Um, and then COVID happened, and then we got the news that, you know, we weren't going to have our graduation like at all. It wasn't going to be in person or anything. And they did do a virtual celebration, which was nice. But I didn't order it yet, and it got late, like late in the semester. And so my mom was asking me about it, and I said, Mom, you know, I haven't ordered it yet. And she's like, you better order it. I'm like, Mom, we're not even going to be in person. She's like, you better order it. So I got my cap and gown, I don't know, like a couple days before what the actual graduation ceremony would have been. And I have yet to actually wear it.
Oh, you did? Because I remember we did a drive-by graduation for you.
Oh, I did wear it, didn't I?
Yeah, I thought, yeah.
You're absolutely right. I forgot about that.
I remember seeing a video of you standing outside in your driveway in a black gown when it was sunny and hot outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I don't remember exactly, but it's possible that my cap and gown did not come yet, and that was somebody else's cap and gown.
Even better.
Either way, yeah, COVID definitely threw a wrench into traditional graduation ceremony and all that, but still the same amount of relief. And actually, I was pretty nostalgic about the whole thing. I had a great time in college, and I learned a lot, and I credit a lot of who I am right now, and the things that I know and the things I've been able to do with the experiences I had in college. So for all of you people that are just that are like, I need to get out of here, I need to graduate, please take the time to soak in as much of the experiences that you can get in your college career, because again, the more experience you have with music and different aspects of music and different peoples and opinions of music, the better you're going to be bringing those experiences to your students.
Right. So we've kind of talked through graduation. Let's transition here to the job search.
Oh boy.
So starting off your job search, you're fresh off the heels of the most boring ceremony of all time, and you're transitioning into applying for jobs. What are thoughts going through your head?
Check your resume. Like check your resume. Like that's step one. Like cover letters, you have to adapt to each position you apply for, but you can more or less like use the same verbiage from each cover letter. It's just change like different bits and pieces of it. But like your resume, because that's what they look at. That's what they see. How do I know this teacher with zero professional experience outside of student teaching? Why should we hire them to teach this class, to teach these students? Like the resume, polish it up. Send it out to people, like send it to like dozens of people. Like ask, like, is this good? Because like that's your first line of defense. Either they're going to look at it and go, wow, or take it and throw it in the garbage. Like one of those two things is going to happen.
Yeah. So the job search actually does not have to start after you graduate. You can start looking for jobs while you're student teaching, actually. And I had, I think, at least 2 interviews while I was still student teaching before I had a license. The only thing is you just when you go to submit those applications, you just make note of that on your resume and on your wherever else you need to note that. But as far as the job search goes, I think the most important thing is, and I've mentioned this in previous podcasts, but you got what you should really start to develop is a vision for how you want to teach. And start orienting your search in that direction. Now, as a first-year teacher, not likely you are going to end up in the picture-perfect job that you have in your head. In fact, I would say that it's near like impossible. It's not impossible, but it's very unlikely. That being said, you don't just want to accept any job that offers you a position. Mm-hmm. You know, it can be tempting to be like, oh, I gotta find a job, otherwise I'm not gonna work. And you know I did my job search during the pandemic, so those feelings are real. And you got to be mindful of those so that they are not driving your decision making process.
Yeah.
That you are making conscious decisions. Okay, am I taking a job that I think I can do and is going to put me in a direction that I want to go? Because now, and this is the hard thing for college graduates to think about, is now you're thinking about your professional career, right? This isn't college anymore. This is like, okay, what steps am I taking to make a long-term choice that's going to lead me in a good direction?
Yeah.
It's not short-term anymore. There's no more short-term decisions.
Yeah.
Right. I remember one of the feelings that I had almost all the way until I was actually offered my current job was like this paralysis by analysis, or I think that's the name for it. But when there's so many options, and or like and you have to like figure out exactly where you want to apply. Do you apply for everything? Do you apply for some things but not for other things? You have to do interviews, and it can be so overwhelming that like I didn't start my job search until after I graduated because mentally I could not handle it, and I have a job. So if any of you listeners are out there and you're thinking, oh boy, it's a lot. I'm with you right there, and it is possible to find something that you end up enjoying. But I wish I started earlier. All that being said, I wish I definitely wish I started earlier.
Well, and the biggest thing is like when like, but this is most important. Like if you're offered a job, like it's okay to turn down that offer. Like you don't have to take it. Like I was offered
that's a big deal.
I was to offer 2 general music jobs that I knew that I would be 1,000% miserable at if I took those positions. And it was like late July, early August point where I'm like, I still don't have a job, but I'm like, I cannot in good conscience take this job because one, I will hate every aspect of it. Like I know general music is not for me at all. Despite recent events making me do that in my real job, I digress. But also because like you gotta think of it from a student perspective. If you're taking a job that you know you're not going to like just for the sake of having money to get an income, you're hurting the students in long term too because you're not going to be 100% there. You're going to be there to do the bare minimum and then go home, and then that's not helping anyone. Like the best way I was described to me is like let someone else who cares more take that job because they will do better than you because just by virtue of giving an actual effort.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was getting at as well with that vision. You know, you want to be discerning. You want to be honest with yourself about where you're looking to go, what you're looking to teach, how you're looking to teach. All of those things need to play a role. And so like we can start to get a little specific about the actual job search process. I know that I applied like a crazy person. I think I must have applied to over it was approaching 40 schools. I'm not even going to lie. It was a lot. I sent out so many applications and I went and before the pandemic, I went and interviewed at places, and then I did a number of Zoom interviews. And if we're being honest, unless you get really lucky, a majority of your applications are going to be rejected. That's just the brutal truth of it, because there are way more places to work than well, actually no, there's more people looking for work than there are jobs.
Right.
And the other thing is you are a first year educator. You know, there are jobs that you are not qualified to take. You can certainly apply for them and get the experience of what it's like to apply for a job like that, but do not anticipate getting a position that is, you know, you teach 4 bands in a day, you have a nationally ranked marching band, you have a you know, state qualifying jazz band program. You know, you actually don't want that job.
Right. But it's never a bad thing to, like you were saying, it's never a bad thing to apply for it.
Oh yeah.
Just to get the experience of sending in that application, but also, you know, who knows? You might get an interview for it, and then even if you go into the interview knowing that either you're not going to take the job if it's offered for you, like we were saying earlier, or going into it knowing there's no way they'll actually offer it to me. Any experience that you've got doing an interview is crucially important. I remember when I was finishing up student teaching, there was some shifting around of positions at the other high school in the district, and there ended up being a high school orchestra position that was posted. And my co-op told me, he's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to get you an interview there. I'm just going to say, hey, you know what? Let's get in. He's been student teaching with me. I know him really well. And then just for some good experience. And so I walked into that interview thinking, I play trumpet, and I just student taught in band, and I'm doing an orchestra interview at a high school. There's no way I'm going to get this job. But that kind of broke the ice a little bit. And it got me feeling more confident about just saying the words in the order that they should be said. So long story short, is any interview is experience. That's good. And number 2, ask your co-ops if there's anything opening up that they'll help you out.
Yeah. So why don't we take a second and let's actually dive into like what our own personal process was when we saw a job opening and we made the decision to apply for it. You know, what were we thinking? What did we do to gain information? And what did we do to make that decision to apply?
Yeah. Well, for me, when I started applying, because I started applying, like I was like Nick, where I was like, I am burnt out beyond all belief right now. Student teaching absolutely like just made me super tired. I just didn't want to think about any of that. So I started applying later. But when I did start applying, I would take a look at the position, like, okay, what does the position entail? Like, what would I have to do? Like, how many bands am I teaching? Am I just doing a 5th grade band? Am I doing a jazz band? Like, what is expected of me if I were to take on this role as the teacher, as a director? And then after that, if this is something that I think I could handle, like if it's like the situation was like you have 15 bands in one day, move on. I'm going to move on because I don't have the mental capacity to do that. And then I would say I get the interview. I do the interview, and the best advice for interview I can give anybody is that every interview is different. Even though the same questions are asked, every interview is different because every administrator is different. They handle interviews way differently than anybody else. So don't just go have the same like generic default like card cut answer for every single question. Like you need to adjust it for every school you go into. But and after the interview, let's say I'm feeling really good. I'm like, you know what, this is a job I can see myself in. Then I start getting information on like what the district offers, like what else, like what district offers. Then you get into the realm. I got in the realm of like figuring out like what do they offer their teachers? Like what PD do they offer? Like, am I able to go and like do my own PD? Like, and like other logistical stuff like benefits, income, all that stuff. And that's the after you are I want to work here step, not the like don't put the cart before the horse. Never put the cart before the horse there, because that's the last thing you think of before you accept a job.
Yeah, I think the my process came down to a couple different things. Location was actually, one of the things that you need to think about that. Now, given I moved 3.5 hours away from home to the job I'm currently in, but you need to be able to say, okay, what am I capable of doing to do this job? Like I knew that I was capable of moving, and I knew that I was capable of living by myself, and I knew that you need to check out. So like all of the details that are surrounding you taking this job, you need to think about those as you're assessing the job itself. So for example, like base layer of looking at a job, you want to go check out the school's website. You want to see what programs are there. You want to see what does the school look like? What if you can go actually see the school, like go drive and see the school if it's that close to you, definitely do that too. You want to get as good of a sense of what it's like to work there as possible before you decide that I'm going to go make it, go to an interview and whatnot. And like the preliminary stages of that, you don't need to go crazy, right? You can just do a quick web search and check out some stuff. You can check the salary, scale. That's all public knowledge. You can check the teacher's contract. I believe that's public knowledge.
It is.
But then once you get a little more serious, for example, like an interview, then you need to start thinking about things like the community that it's in and what you're going to be making versus where you could live. And, what are your, maybe this is kind of secondary, but what are your hobbies or the things around for you to do that make you an actual person, right? You're making a huge choice, a huge life choice about where your income is coming from, but you want to make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position possible, that you're going to actually be a well-functioning human being when you do that job. So step one, making sure that you like the school, and Tony said it great too. You need to know what you're actually being asked to do in this job, because believe it or not, and I hated this throughout the whole process, they don't do a great job of telling you that in the applications. They're usually just like band director.
That could mean anything.
Right. That could literally mean anything. So
we'll talk about this when we get to the getting hired stage of this. But just to foreshadow, I applied to a different job than I was offered when they gave me the job. So that happens too sometimes.
Yep, it does.
So definitely make it a priority of yours when you're looking for jobs to get informed. I know that that's like a cliche thing, but you want to be able to know something about the place. Like if when you go into the interview, you want to know something about, like if the interviewers tell you something about the community, you want to know something that they tell you. You want to be like, oh yeah, okay, I know what they're talking about. I saw that, I read that.
Right. So there's all this mental preparation that you go through to do it, like, thinking about living arrangements, whether you want to work there and all that stuff. And then the other side of that is all of the boxes that you have to check in order for you to just get that interview in the first place. So the first thing is there's lots of websites for job postings. I know the ones that I always did was on it's called Applitrack or something like that. They all kind of funneled toward this. And so just from some housekeeping perspectives, make a folder on your computer with your current applications, ones that you've completed, ones that you'd like to start, because in order to even before you actually get a call that says we'd like you to interview, you have to answer all of these pre-screening questions. Some of them are school specific and they want to know specific answers about how you would handle a certain situation. A lot of them are from kind of like a common application. Same thing that a lot of colleges have, common app, and you can reuse answers for that. So start a Word document and type out the question and then give it a really, really good thought once, and then just copy paste that same thing over and over, because most of them are not school specific at all. And then it's just a big time saver. So it starts to reaffirm, okay, this is what I think about this topic, and then it's a time saver of now I don't have to remember what I did. So just save it once, and never have to worry about it again. Then the next, before you get to the resume, you have a cover letter. And I know maybe you guys knew what that was before the job search. I had no idea. I don't know. Did you guys feel the same way?
I didn't know. I mean, I kind of had an understanding of what it was as we were going, but I didn't know that that's something that you had to do.
Dr. Griffin drilled that into our heads because he came in at Instrumental and Choral one day and was like, you need to have a good cover letter, otherwise you will not make it past you will go into the trash immediately.
Yeah, there you go. I don't remember if he did that for us, but I just remember that was like what? So the difference between your resume and your cover letter is your resume is you specific, and here's what I've done, here's why you should hire me. The cover letter is more school specific, where you kind of state why you'd be good for that particular job and why you want to apply for that particular job. Generally, just 3 paragraphs. First paragraph, kind of intro to you, and make a connection with the school. Like, my parents, sisters, husband's dog went to this school, so I'm really excited. Just make a connection. Second paragraph is where you talk about your experiences as a teacher, and for those of you just graduating college, it's just going to be your student teaching experience. Doesn't have to be long, but talk about what you did there, a little bit about how you helped out certain things, maybe any programs that you ran. Third is just a really short, I'm going to be a great candidate for this position. I look forward to hearing back from you. If you structure it like that, that's, kind of what they're looking for when they turn that page.
And you don't have to like rework the formula every time you do it. Like, you can absolutely cut and paste things from cover letters. Like, obviously the school specific stuff should probably change, otherwise, because they will 1000% know that you were just copying and pasting. But like, you can cut and paste like your experiences in like student teaching or your teaching experience like that. That's not going to change. So so you don't have to like rework the entire thing over and over again. Like, you can have a template and then adjust as need fit.
Let's do some quick tips on resumes, and then we'll jump into interview procedure. What lessons we learned from interviews, things that you think people should know about how to conduct them and how to conduct yourself in an interview. So resumes, I think for me, the biggest thing with a resume is you want to do a good job of representing your experience, who you are as an educator, right? That's got to be kind of a big priority on there, because there's a good chance you're not going to be able to fit. Well, as a first year teacher, you might be able to fit everything on there that you've done. But as you get more experience, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to fit everything that you think you should put on one page. And it was stressed to me that you really want to try and keep it to one page. But the other thing is, you do want to actually make it a point to tailor your resume to places that you are applying to. So for example, if you're applying to a place that really values marching band, you're not going to keep your like extensive experience of daycare work on your resume over, your work with a high school marching band, right? For example, if you were applying for a general music job, you might want to put the fact that you used to work in a daycare for 5 summers, right? Because that's relevant information to why your employer would hire you.
Yeah, kind of jumping off of that, something that it took me a little bit of time to figure out is that if you've had other jobs, great, but realistically schools don't really care. So it's more beneficial to put down that you were, like each summer, if you had different like summer band positions, like write those down before you write down like I worked at a gas station for 3 years and did customer training. Like, okay, great, you did the training part, but they want to know more about like, all right, you're a band teacher, you did summer band, you've taught in this kind of way.
Any other comments on resumes?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Have it be relevant, have it be specific enough to where like they know, so that they can take a glance and go, okay, this person's probably qualified to do this job.
Yep.
And I feel confident I'm bringing them in.
Yeah, and keep the design simple. An extravagant design is not for the resume.
You don't gotta bring out the calligraphy pen and start like handwriting your resume out.
Right. Times New Roman. We don't need cursive, Old English.
All right, so moving on to interview process then, right?
Yes.
And there's lots of different kinds of interviews as well. I know that just like thinking back to all the types that I did, I could think of 4. I remember doing a phone screener, which was like, they said, hey, we're interested in you as a candidate. Let's just do a phone call, just kind of going through some interview questions. It's obviously the in-person kind of traditional ones. I've done them virtually. and this is before Zoom. So I think we used Skype. I know I'm ancient.
Whoa.
And then I also had an interview that was just an asynchronous thing where like I had to record myself answering different questions, and that was used.
So I think mainly let's focus on maybe some of the questions you might expect to get and the way you want to represent yourself in an interview that's going to lead to success. I think just to start off generally, the biggest thing for me on interviews is you want to go in again with this vision, right? Because if you know, well, first off, you want to know why you like to teach. Like that's a big one. If you know the answer to that question, that informs your answers to other questions, and they will be able to pick up if you are, because they're looking to see if you're going to be a fit for their school, their community. So a big thing that I used to think when I was doing my interviews, and something that I like to tell people about interviews, is you want to imagine that interview, at least in part, that you are in a meeting with your administration, because you kind of are, right? You're learning what those people are like, and you're giving them an impression of what it's going to be like to work with you. So the way you answer questions and the way you address them and the way that you respond is going to inform them about what it's going to be like to have you in their community.
Mm-hmm. I think with the interview questions that you're going to get, the biggest thing is like one of the questions that I know that you're absolutely going to get, and I hate answering every single time, but they're going to ask you is like, why do you think you're the best fit for this position? Yes. I hate that question, mainly because one, I don't think I'm the best fit for the position. Not because I'm bad, but because that's a really, really subjective question where you're asking me to compare myself to people that I don't even know. So it's like the way and like some of you might be comfortable answering that. Like here's I guess like you have like here's reasons A, B, C why I think I'm the best fit for this position, and that's fine. Like that's totally fine. But for me, it's like for someone like me, where I'm like, I don't think I am the best fit. But here's why you hiring me would pay off in the long run, because I have such passion and like such dedication to what I do that like working with these kids will be a growing experience for me and for them. Mm-hmm. And it's like then because in that way you're framing it as like, if you frame it that way, you're framing it as like, I'm going to put 110% in, but I'm not comparing myself to anybody else, because sometimes some admins, that just speaks volumes.
Yeah. So here's a great example of an interview skill that everybody should develop, which is kind of reading a room and understanding people. You right from the very beginning, you should start to try and figure out kind of what they're looking to hear. And it's a balancing act between you saying what you know is true, right, about yourself, but you also giving a little bit of what the interviewer wants to hear. So for example, that question specifically, why are you the best for this job? I see a couple different avenues that I could answer that question in. I could either just simply talk about my strengths as an educator, right? Like that's a pretty straightforward answer. I'm good at these things, and this is why those things would be good for your students. Or you could take that in a community direction, like display your knowledge of the school itself, and then talk about why you as a person or as an educator would fit in with the community of the school. And you certainly can do both. But those are just two examples of directions that you can take with a question that are going to impact the way that they are perceiving you as a candidate, right? So for example, if I went with the community route, maybe they're really looking to have a program built, right? And they're really looking for somebody who's just going to come and join their community. That would be an appropriate way to answer that question. But if they asked that question with the purpose of trying to assess your, like, what's the word? Your strength as an individual, and they want to hear you talk about yourself and talk about, defend your ability to teach. Maybe you talk about, okay, this is where I am strong in, and this is what I have to offer for your students. So again, it's a balancing act, and a decision that you have to make in real time when you get in there with those administrators.
Yeah, another deceptively tricky question that is pretty much always the first question they asked is, all right, tell us a little bit about yourself. And
Yes.
it's deceptively hard because you're like, what do I say? What do you want to hear versus what do I want to? Do you really want to know what I,
Like, do you care what I want to do outside my personal time? I don't think so.
Right. And so a lot of these questions that do come up over and over have an answer kind of prepared for, and work through your answers. Say them out loud, as silly as it might be. Like, you can do an interview by yourself. You know what questions are going to be asked. Like you could Google like just interview questions or whatever. But like speaking your answer out loud is crucial, because when you get, it's just like practicing. If you practice, measures 8 through 16, because those are the hardest measures, and you do it over and over and you do it slowly, then your body knows what to do when you get there during the concert. Well, it's the same thing with an interview, where if you practice saying the words in the order that you want to say them, or show yourself in that light, then when you get to the interview, it'll happen for you.
So when you get the question of tell us about yourself, I don't think you should necessarily shy away from talking about those personal things. You do need to show that you're a human in these interviews, and humor is great. If you can make those people laugh, the administrators laugh, you make a personal connection with them, that'll go a long way. But at the same time, you are in an interview for a job, a specific job. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. You do need to continue to hint about things that are relevant for you doing that job. So even, I hope that, us as individuals have lots of good stuff going on in our lives, hobbies and interests and all that stuff. So you should have a selection to choose from. So, I'm not going to go necessarily into my interview and they're going to ask me, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm going to tell them all about my extensive basket weaving collection, right? That might be funny, but it's just not relevant. If I have extensive experience, for example, as a summer camp counselor, that might be relevant to being an educator, right?
Yeah.
Especially if it's something that you value. So yeah, that question can be deceivingly hard, especially if you have not thought about it before, right?
I think one of the important things to know is that you're allowed to give yourself like 5 seconds to think about answering the question. You don't have to like fire one out immediately. Like you have, you can like take like a second to compose your thoughts and go, okay, don't sit there for like 2 minutes thinking about it. But like you don't have to like rapid fire an answer off. Like you can just sit there and like for like a second and just think.
Yeah, and it's also perfectly acceptable to say, can you repeat the question, please? Because we all know that when we get into those situations, sometimes even if we're super focused and listening to what they say, sometimes you hear the words but don't understand the meaning, or just miss what they're asking you to do. So it's perfectly acceptable to say, oh, you know what, could you please repeat that question?
Yeah. So there's one area that all freshly graduated teachers or about to be teachers are going to fail in. And that's, what experience do you have in X, area? Because realistically speaking, we don't have any experience. All of our experience is clinically based in college, which yes, technically is experience, but it's not the experience of having a previous job where that was your job. So this is a thing that I did not do very well in my interviews. And it was the number one call that I would get why I didn't, they didn't want me to fulfill that position was, we're just looking for something different, a candidate with more experience. So in order to combat that as much as possible, you want to make sure that you're prepared with specific examples of things that you did while you were in college that answer those questions. So
Mhm.
a number one that I think comes up in interviews more and more now is the students with special needs and disabilities, right? What experience do you have working with those students? What practices and techniques have you used in the past to, include those students in your instruction? That's, that can be an interview destroyer, right? If you don't have a good answer for that, or you say, I never really thought about students with disabilities before. Like that's a no. You have to have some answer for that.
Right. And I'm sure this year especially, I can see interviewers really honing in on how did you adapt your curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you didn't specifically do anything, but your co-ops made all of the decisions, and that's fine. You could say, I worked with my cooperating teachers to
Yes.
do X, Y, and Z,
Mhm.
or I influenced their decision in this way. But I would be looking out for that kind of question.
Yeah. And I guess especially now, because if you're looking to get a job because you're graduating in like a couple months, the biggest thing is the technology aspect. Like, because
Yeah.
I can guarantee you, in every interview you're going to go on, they're going to ask you how have you used technology in the classroom, especially now. I can almost promise that it's going to happen. Like, look up platforms. Look into Smart Music. Look into Flipgrid. Look into like Upbeat Live and Upbeat Perform. Like, there's lots of stuff out there, Bandcamp or whatever. Just keep looking into stuff because there's a lot out there, and just get an idea of like how you could use that in a classroom. Because even though you may not have used it in your prior district, you saying, here's how I can use this to help students learn better in this ridiculous situation goes an incredibly long way, because all they're looking for right now is can you effectively instruct your students using the resources at hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the last couple of things we want to get into here, just some thoughts and takeaways from the whole process. What mindset should you be in when you go into this job searching process, and then maybe we'll take ourselves, we'll do a brief little summary of maybe our first day or first week in our new job.
So a couple thoughts is, as you're applying to jobs, consider the public versus private school. I know I was a final candidate for a private school. And at the same time, I was a final candidate for a public school. And I remember talking to a lot of people about that. Private schools do not always do TRS. And so you won't have the same retirement benefits, which you want to be in that position where from your first year you're contributing to that. So I mean, of course, if private school is something you want to do, yeah, awesome, go for it. But if you're kind of on the fence, doesn't matter, you could take either job, and one's public, one's private. I would go with the public option because of those extra benefits that you get there.
You're just offered more. Yeah.
Right.
Take stock of what they're offering you, because then that's where it becomes like what Nick said with TRS. Not all districts pay for TRS. Like, I'm fortunate to work in a district where they do pay for my contribution to TRS, but not everyone offers that. Like, benefits, what are they offering? Because like, while people who are watching right now are probably under the age of 26, at some point it's going to become a reality where you're going to have to think about that. And it's like you don't want to have to leave a district because you have almost no coverage anywhere else. Like, it's like, especially because if you love the job, because that would be a complete bummer. So like, do your homework, like read through the contract, read through like everything that they have, and go like, are they offering me enough to where this would be a worthwhile investment? Because like, ultimately when it comes down to, like, yeah, you're there for the kids and like you want to teach it and it's great, but on the business side of things, it's like, is this an investment worth making?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're starting to hit on a topic that probably could be its own podcast, right?
You are right.
The career versus the passion part of what it is to be a teacher. So that's kind of my takeaway is, now when you're in college, you have a lot of passion for our craft. That's pretty much the only thing we think about in college, because we're still students and we're still learning and we're still growing, and you do that as a teacher too. But as a teacher, what you do when you accept your first job is you're making a career move. That's what it is. And you need to be conscious of what that move sets you up to do in the future. But the other thing, the passion part of it is, do it with joy. Show the people that you're interviewing that you like to teach, that you like, kids, and you like showing people new things and developing ideas and music, and show them that joy, because that is the thing that's going to leave an impression on those people more than your resume, more than any of the numbers and figures and facts. You want them, you want to leave that interview feeling like you could fit in with their community, and you want them to feel like that the same thing. You want to make that fit happen. And once you convince them of that, then you have the power, because you can accept or decline a position, right? So you want to put yourself in the best opportunity, the best situation possible, that you can say no. You want the option to say no. Yeah, just do it with joy, because otherwise it's not worth doing,
Yeah.
Right.
We have the best job in the world, like hands down. Like, it doesn't make sense to hate what you do.
Yep.
So as a teaser, I guess let's all do a little, just maybe a story of your first week or your first day in your new job.
Well, I'll start off, because my story that I really want to tell has happened prior to me actually starting, but I think it's worth telling. So I applied for my current position, and it was supposed to be band at two different elementary schools. So fifth grade band split between two buildings. I went and I interviewed, and I did multiple round interviews for this position. And I'm driving home for my last interview, not even an hour after I left. And I get a phone call saying, "Hey, you're the candidate that we'd like to pick. But what if, what if instead of band at two different schools, you taught band and orchestra just at one school?" And I could tell it was like, all right, either I say yes or they move on to the next candidate.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh yeah. And so I said, yes, I have taken string tech, and I feel like and maybe that wasn't the best thing to say. Anyway, long story short, now I'm teaching orchestra, and I love every minute of it. I never thought I'd be teaching orchestra, but let me tell you, they're a good group of kids, and I'm really glad I got that chance.
Power to you, man. Oh man. So anybody who knows my teaching situation knows that my first year was an experience. So long story short, I was hired on as a long-term sub. I interviewed as a long-term sub, got the job, thinking, yeah, you do, don't you? I was offered the job, like, I think a day or two after I was offered the job. The person I was subbing for unfortunately passed away. And my first day in the building, my principal goes, "Hey, come here for a second. So here's what happened. Are you still okay with this?" And I'm like, and outwardly, I'm like, yeah, of course I am. Inwardly, in my head, I'm like, well, it's either this or I'm unemployed. So, so that was a fun start to my career. It was like, hey, like, we're so glad to have you on board. By the way, like,
I think my first day of school, and obviously we had some days to prep before the school year started, but my first day of school was, it isn't as severe as I'm going to say it, but it was a little bit of survival mode, a little bit, because my job that I'm in right now, I teach a whole district of music. I teach fourth through high school band. So my first day, I went to I go to 3 different schools 3 days a week, and then 2 different schools 2 days a week. So, my first day, it was just like, okay, where am I going? What am I doing? Who am I seeing? How am I doing it? A lot of it was just making sure that I'm in the right place at the right time, and, we can go from there. It's a lot of, what's your name again?
Oh yeah, learning names.
So, and I think the big thing for me was general music. I'm teaching 2 general music classes, 5th grade general music, and that has been a learning curve, to say the least. And especially during COVID, because they all have to stay in their desks. I can't have them getting up and doing things. So, I mean, I don't want to claim that I'm any good at it yet, but I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm starting to get a handle on what it's like to teaching 5th graders is like herding cattle, but like conceptually, like you have to give them a task, and then they follow that path. And then if a couple of them like move away from the herd, you got to like make sure that they didn't come back. Cause if you don't get those 2, then the rest of them will start going with that.
Get the shepherd's crook out. Like,
right.
Yes.
I funniest thing about teaching doing 5th grade is, all right, everyone, we're going to start at measure 17. We're starting at measure 17. It's the one that comes after 16. Look for measure. It's in a box. Jordan, what measure are we starting at? No, not measure 12. We're starting 17. Nope, not page 17.
The best person to go, wait, where are we?
Right. One of them will.
Where am I?
But that is something that you can look forward to when you have your own career, for those of you listening. So I think, are we about wrapping up?
Uh-huh.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for listening to our views and our thoughts about the job search, and then that finally that first day. Tony, it's been a pleasure having you on for this mini series.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really, this is a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on at some point to share
anytime.
more of your expertise.
Anytime. Well, expertise.
Sure. All right, so this has been the In Good Time podcast, of course, with Andrew and myself. Hopefully you'll tune in again in the future. Have a great rest of your day.